What are you trying to prevent?
I didn't know if the city, I was. I just don't want this to be. I don't want to be ready more. Want to I don't know. They would not.
Or like, you don't.
Alguien se me llama.
There.
Los dos.
So say.
Yeah, alguien me.
So,
Yes.
thank you for joining us. Today is
No, Tuesday.
Thursday, March 28th, 2024. Calling the Committee on City Property meeting together. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Gonzalez,
Present,
Vice Chair Sue Endelon,
present.
absent.
She's absent.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I thought they.
Councilman Espinal,
Present.
Councilwoman Graves,
Present.
Councilwoman Peterson,
Present.
4 present, 1 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you'd be so kind to read number 1 into the record.
Item 1, an ordinance in amendment of chapter 15 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Providence entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic to amend to add Article 21 weight limits.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I'd like to call members of the administration up to testify on this matter. And I also want to acknowledge our city solicitor, Stolnick, for joining us, and also Nicholas Poulos for helping to draft this ordinance as well. So, Madam Clerk, if we could have our guests be sworn in.
Sure, please raise your right hands. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your names and titles for the record.
Emily Workville, Chief of Staff.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Would you mind if I brought up Officer Hastings, who handles our commercial enforcement, or do you want to wait until you have?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Come on.
And then,
Please raise your hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your name and title for the record, sir. Thank you.
thank you. And I'd also like to acknowledge Counselor Sanchez, our Chief of Staff, Chief Rose, also our Director of Policy, Aaron Burns. And Councilwoman Vargas.
Abe Vargas.
Yes. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. So thank you so much for the time and consideration. The ordinance that's before you, we want to come and support and kind of walk through with you all and answer any questions that you may have. So the goal of this ordinance is to prohibit large vehicles, specifically over 15 tons, I believe is the version that we are looking for. It is enforceable, to stop them from driving on city streets that are right now not built for those weight limits. We're seeing an influx of large vehicles, particularly in the streets outlined in front of you. So Angel Street, South Angel Street, Waterman and Gano, and small pieces of Medway and Butler that connect those streets. That traffic is increased by the Washington Bridge closure. We're seeing trucks coming over the Henderson Bridge and into the city who don't have business in those areas and cutting through those areas, going downtown to get back on the highway to try to not utilize the Washington Bridge and instead utilize Henderson through city streets. We've heard from neighbors and from community members that the trucks are impacting quality of the streets. The mayor heard directly from one resident that if they have a crack in their wall, we're seeing a lot of overnight travel of these vehicles, and that's increasing pedestrian risk in these neighborhoods and along these crosswalks. I'm here to answer any questions, but I'm also happy to walk through what enforcement would look like if that's helpful for you all.
So that would be great. And if you could also elaborate on some of the changes that were made.
I sure can. From the original.
Post introduction, that would be great.
Absolutely. So post introduction, we started to work through what enforcement would look like with our DPW team and with our public safety department. it was brought to our attention that, there were some areas along Butler and Medway that a truck possibly could get on and then not get off, which is why we added those streets. We clearly added in school buses because it was not exempt in other parts of the state statutes that we have been referencing. And then we clearly outlined that vehicles performing maintenance, utility work, cleaning, snow removal, or de-icing on or above and along the restricted roadway would be included. And that was the bulk of the services that DPW thought would be traveling on those roads. You'll also see in section 4 that vehicles whose origin or destination abuts the restricted roadway. So wherever their origin is, if their destination is along these routes or they're delivering to these routes, they would be exempt as well. That is all local deliveries. And so those were the majority of the changes, I believe, that were made. You will note that the first section, the weight of vehicles on bridges, is an existing city ordinance that would move into this ordinance to put all of our weight restrictions in one place. And the additional change to 15 tons, it was brought to our attention that large vehicles, large trucks, and the officer can speak more in specifics about the weight of these large trucks, but that would only be prohibiting those trucks when empty. And there's some of these smaller trucks that when full, would be over the limit. And so we moved that down to a recommended 15 tons, which is 30,000 pounds. That's also consistent with the weight limit that's on our local bridges that is already in a city.
And that was a change to the ordinance that was initially introduced, and there is an amendment here that we need to enter into the record.
I was not given the amendment, so
Okay, so
I am,
is there a motion
does everyone have the amendment?
No, we're gonna be making a motion to enter that into the record.
Okay,
Do I need to review
So,
well, we're gonna enter it into the record, so you're substituting 1A for 1.
correct.
Okay, and I'll make some copies for the committee.
Can I make this, there's a
Yeah.
typo here, so I'm gonna make a change
Yeah,
by hand, because I,
Can we just, so procedurally, can we enter that into the record first? So council members can have an opportunity to take a look at it, and then we can ask those questions.
here we go.
So, is there a motion to enter the amendment into the record? Motion made by Councilor Espinal, seconded by Councilor Peterson. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and so, Madam Clerk, looks like there was a stack right here, so
Oh,
they're already printed out.
great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So this is the ordinance that was originally introduced, and this would be the amendment to the ordinance. Chief, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on the weight limit here? And I know we have an expert here also in the police department that you want to explain.
sure. So Officer Hastings handles commercial enforcement. Would be helpful, officer, if you just wanted to talk through the 15 ton versus 25 ton.
Sure. I believe the intent of this legislation is to have 15 tons, which is 30,000 pounds. If we have 25 tons on the streets that was proposed prior to this amendment, it would be like, we wouldn't be able to enforce a 15,000 pounds because the vehicles traveling from East Providence to Providence, that bridge is rated for 80,000 tons. So if we were to only allow 15,000, they would be allowed to travel on the roadways with 25 tons. And if we were to enforce that, we'd have to have them travel on the roadways that we want to prevent them from traveling.
To weigh them.
To weigh, because we'd have to weigh it to make sure that they exceed 25 tons. So I suggested to the chief that it should be reduced to 15 tons, which wouldn't allow us to weigh it. We could just sit in with the 15 ton violation. Is that, did I explain it correctly? So in essence, I need to try to, if we. The intent prior to this was if they travel from East Providence to Providence, we would. If the vehicles were classified to be over 15 tons, we'd pull them over. Would issue a violation, but if they were under 50 tons, they could continue traveling on those other roadways. And it would be like you wouldn't be serving any benefit. And you'd have to weigh them, and in order to weigh them, I'd have to have them travel on the roadways that we're trying to restrict to 25 tons to see if they exceeded that. So it would be a regular purpose. So that's the reason why we did that.
We have some visual representations for you all, if you want them to be included.
And for like math conversion purposes, 2,000 tons, or 2,000 pounds is equal to a ton.
That's
Yes.
So 15 tons in this case would be, so it's 15 times 2, 30,000 pounds. So just so everyone is aware of that.
So there's different classes of the commercial trucks, which I've now learned a lot about. And so what is in front of you is, I believe, class 8, right? And so that is the 18-wheelers and the heavier trucks that we're looking at are prohibit on these streets that would potentially.
And then would someone from the legal department want to speak a little bit to the exemptions here?
I'm happy to. I would like to make just two notes on the record first. Looking at this, I hadn't seen these red lines, some of these red lines. I think this should read in 715 Ford 141 gross vehicle weight rating, instead of gross weight vehicle rating. And then on the back on section 4, to state weight limit 15 tons instead of 25 tons would be my suggestion. But going back onto we're talking about the exemption. So there's a statute on the books that allows us to do this for city controlled roads. We can't control state owned roads, but we can control city owned roads. There are certain statutes, certain vehicles that are automatically exempt, which we can't ban. So those include RIPTA buses, certain vehicles for, I think, certain types of road machinery, tractors. If a tractor somehow comes over the Washington Bridge or the Henderson Bridge. So we have to exempt those. School buses, obviously, we want school buses to be able to pick up children. Same thing with garbage trucks. And there's also a constitutional issue about perhaps if there's a business or someone, we don't want to limit people's ability to use their property. So if somebody is going to their property or going to somebody's house to pick up, maybe if there's a moving truck or somebody making a delivery to the Dunkin' Donuts on Gano, they have to be able to do that. So that's what the exemption for local traffic is. So it's really just making sure that these local roads stay local. And that nobody who has business on the road is inconvenienced by this. We want everybody who's, all the neighbors to be happy.
Questions from committee members, Councilor?
Yeah, just to follow up, basically, you don't want anybody cutting through.
That's what that is. Those roads are not meant for large trucks. And so cutting through from East Providence to Providence, whatever, we don't want to have a whole bunch of volume of large trucks going through. So yes, but
there are certain businesses that are already engaging in services with certain trucks at certain capacity. I imagine that they will be able to continue to do that.
yes.
As they are within the local business
Yes.
usage. And emergency vehicles.
Yeah. We're really trying to keep the status quo, Councilor. Yeah.
So basically just cut through. Almost.
Yeah, so this would essentially
Pretty broad there.
disincentivize anyone who's trying to use Providence as a cut through. We're seeing a lot of these trucks coming in from the Henderson Bridge, for example, and that's deteriorating a lot of our local roadways.
Let me just ask one more quick question, then I'm all set. So is this covering all the possible streets that could be used off the, as a cut through?
That's the intent. If you look at a map, we've tried to make it so if someone comes off of the Henderson Bridge, they have to turn around in a safe way. They can't just turn around we're not having them turn around the first possible. They have to turn around in a safe location and then head back onto the bridge.
So that's common, well, thank you.
Counselor Peterson.
Let me just gather my thoughts. So the city of East Providence, in an effort to combat some of this, puts police officers and just basically doesn't allow people to go down specific streets. It's morning, noon, and night. How will we, I would like to learn a little bit more about enforcement on it.
So, when this would receive double passage and then become law, so the next day, we would start a 48-hour grace period. And so a little bit of an educational period, we would post no parking along South Angel Street. So that would allow the officers to pull over vehicles and inform them of the local ordinance and make sure that there's an educational period here. And then it would also allow for the trucks to then get onto Butler, take a left, get back onto Waterman, and go back onto the Henderson and reroute. Similarly on the Gano Street side of this, and so for trucks that are utilizing India Street into Gano Street, same sort of enforcement officers would pull them over, inform them of the ordinance, and then ask them to turn back to get back to the highway. You know, we've considered just solely police enforcement, but we just simply don't have enough officers to cover all of these entry points. And it's not a best use of our officers' time. We would be submitting for reimbursement for all of these. However, we have been a little bit slow in getting our reimbursement. And so that's also, we're just trying to be responsible about how we're using our officers' time. And how many officers are trained in this type of.
Can I just follow up?
Yeah, and to be respectful to the deputy chief, would you want to be sworn in to speak on the enforcement as well? Alright. So, and then Counselor Peterson.
Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and title for the record, sir.
Deputy Chief Timothy O'Hara. Thank you for joining us, Deputy Chief. Counselor Peterson.
So that was gonna be my follow-up question. How are you? I wanted to know how many police would be required to do this kind of in the interim stage while we're making sure people are following the rule.
I believe it was 4 officers on the South Angel side. I'm not sure how many officers we would need in total on the Gino side.
Probably an additional 2 on the Gano Street side, because it would be easy to divert them back onto 195 west, or then divert them on Indian Street to get them.
Okay,
4 officers on the Henderson Bridge side.
okay,
The few turns you have to make sure that we make those turns and get back over.
okay.
We would do that for a 7-day period and then reevaluate the concept.
Okay. Okay,
And then
Thank
for the record, I know that there were concerns about trucks potentially turning right, and that was mitigated with some of these amendments. Does anybody want to speak to that? Or yeah, we can enter, if you share your piece, and then we'll go back to that.
Yeah.
Counselor Graves.
No, Council Peterson was asking a question that I wanted to ask, but what is gonna be the cost of overtime? Are they gonna be, these officers, these 6 officers, are they gonna be doing overtime on this? Or is this their regular, time period and someone keeps coming back?
It's gonna be overtime, yeah.
But similarly to, so when this bridge first happened back in December, we had a similar strategy where we had officers out directing traffic, if you recall. Kind of keeping the roads flowing in one direction and getting everyone used to, the new traffic, so we utilized overtime in that case as well. And we submit to the state for reimbursement for that, so the state does reimburse us for any overtime or straight time that's incurred, that's relative to the Washington Bridge. And the same as with Providence.
That's a great question.
One other small, um. I don't, but like me, how are you gonna gauge the weight of these trucks? How are they being weighed? I mean, cause I can look at a truck and say, oh, it's definitely way over. And it might not be, or I can look at one and say, ah, it doesn't look that bad. So how do they do that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna allow the officer to respond, but I've learned so much about trucks. And
Okay.
I recently found out that they do have their weight posted, their empty weight posted on the inside of their vehicles. Do you wanna talk a little bit more about them?
Okay, could you just repeat the question, Administrator?
Yeah, I just wanted to know how to gauge the weight of the trucks. Those 6 officers, when they come up, they can say, oh, stop, you turn around. How are they gauging? the weight?
So we would train the officers, if they're not commercial enforcement, we would give them some type of training. Like we have over these class A trucks,
Mhm.
and if they are a class 7 truck and they exceed the weight, when they get pulled over, and we do not need probable cause to pull the vehicles over, because by federal law, any commercial motor vehicle can be pulled over for safety inspections.
Okay,
So we pull the vehicle over, and inside, every vehicle, including passenger vehicles, the manufacturer puts a gross vehicle weight rating on the door. And I'll tell you the exact weight that the manufacturer says that allows that vehicle to have for weight.
okay.
And that's empty.
Empty weight.
That is the weight, like a payload weight. Would be like, just for clarification, these trucks here, like you have a dump truck, and they have the gross weight, that is the weight with the allowed amount of payload. So
Okay.
if they exceed that payload, they have to get a special permit from the state in order for them to travel on the roadways, because the roadways are designed for a certain amount of weight, and those payloads and those weights are didn't on that.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes, it does, thank you.
So many fun facts about trucks.
Additional questions from committee members?
Mhm.
Councilman?
Well, let me just add that I think it's a very proactive, forward-looking piece of legislation that I support. I think this is a great idea. They are putting a lot of use on our roads, so we need to take measures for that. So thanks for this sponsorship.
Thank you for your leadership.
One of the other things,
That's a very-
if they start rerouting other ways, are we gonna be able to add the other streets, displace them in?
That's a great question. I was actually thinking the same thing. So if this needed to be further amended because of any implications that this caused, would we be able to come back and do so?
By this process, right?
Yeah, I changed it to a table, so it'll be easier to amend as opposed to having all the subsections with the same words everywhere, so.
Smart.
Okay,
So councilors, yes, if you're seeing implications of this, we certainly want to know and amend as appropriate. Councilor Vargas?
It's only a question. The company for the truck using any information case, can empower, that kind of street, because I received some call, and if they can give you some ticket, So they give you a little information, a little detail, case not can go pass around for that kind of street.
So I would.
Any company receive that information?
Yeah, so the question is, the companies that are, many of these companies are exempt, but for the other companies that are involved in these deliveries, what is that education process going to look like? That's a very good question.
That's a great question. So if you recall, there was a 24-hour period where we had to put we had to do a very quick detour in this area, so we had to prohibit all transportation on Gano Street. And so we worked with our partners at the state police to notify out, and so there's some sort of trucking ways that folks use, and so it notifies folks that are utilizing that system, and that's how we notice them in advance. And so whoever is utilizing it, their registered vehicle, their registered truck, they're gonna receive notification that there's some sort of prohibition in this area. And that's how we notify trucks in that quick 24-hour window when we only have like 6 hours to put that detour in place. We utilize that same system. And then that's why we're also doing a 48-hour grace period, so that there's a little bit of on-the-ground education, and that folks that may not know about it, enter the city and are caught up on.
Mhm. And then, Director Easter Gardner had a couple things to share, I think, on behalf of the council member who wasn't yet.
Yeah, just, Aaron Easter Gardner, the city director calls for the council, and I'm not speaking for myself, I'm just speaking for Councilor Andrew, who is, some people to make it. Some of the questions she had were actually, asked here. One thing that she was concerned with is that, this is a, long-term problem, and this may be a short-term solution for it. She also had concerns that this was just going to spill out into, other wards, and she was just worried about what the enforcement, was there. And then, lastly, that's pretty much it. Just those are the concerns. I just wanted to make that clear for her.
The administration want to speak to that at all?
I appreciate that feedback. I think that we all understand that this is a long-term problem. I also think that this is a long-term goal, that people aren't utilizing this for whatever 2 to 3 year period this might be, and so I hope it's shorter than that. I think that this is kind of a solution for that interim period.
And Councilor Vargas had another point. Thank you.
Another question, the business, I know when you have received delay for the product, you needed to sell it for the people. The state or the city give it some money or something for tapping money or something
That's a
for
good
that
point.
kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would defer to the administration. So the question was, these businesses that are being affected by this, is the state providing them with any resources, perhaps in the form of, I'm sure, grants or other state funding to mitigate some of these challenges that they're experiencing?
I mean, right now, they have a loan, the state has a loan program that businesses can apply to. We have received feedback that not all businesses are interested in taking out a loan. We communicated that feedback to the state, encouraged some sort of more direct grant program. The city does not have the funds right now to apply a direct grant program, but we are trying to work with Commerce to figure out how to kind of wiggle through some dollars for something that is not a loan-based program.
And ultimately, businesses or trucks that are going to businesses to conduct a delivery would be exempt. But if you're hearing anything, please be vigilant. I think that's something that I'm sure this committee would want to know more about, and I'm sure other council members. So I think it's important for us to just keep our eye on the prize and figure out what the implications are. But if we do nothing, that would also be very challenging and problematic for any of our neighborhoods. So without further ado, we do have to make a motion.
Well, did you want to enter this into the record?
Oh, yes. Can you make a motion to enter that exhibit into the record? Motion in second. Made by Councilor Graves, seconded by Councilor Espinal. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. And then a motion to
Approve as amended.
approve as amended. Motion made by Councilor Graves, seconded by Councilor Espinal. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. This is approved as amended, and then a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Espinal. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Nick, can you send that to me or more?
I'll have.